most common mistake in taking care of a plant, especially indoors, is how much water to put or how much water to dispense for the plant. Hi, I am Abby Abiol and I'm a landscape architect. I went to the University of the Philippines. Initially, I started as a film student and then I shifted courses into the Bachelor of Landscape Architecture. This profession really appealed to me. A well-planned garden is a space that the end users, or let's say if it's a family that owns the space, a garden, it's something that is easy for them to manage, easy for them to maintain, because you can't keep it looking nice if you cannot maintain it well. So no matter how much work we put into the design, no matter how much planning we put into doing that garden, if your end user cannot maintain it, it's going to be difficult to keep it beautiful. Sometimes it's just sweeping out, dead leaves, removing dry branches, and it will look different already. First off, I ask for their wish list on their outdoor space. I try to find out what kind of activities they would like to have, like as a family, or if they are the types that entertain a lot of people, if they like having their parties there, or if they are, let's say, a very private person or a private family, then these parameters give me the direction for how I'm going to design a space for a client. I think it's to have some commitment in maintaining their space, because once you put in, let's say, a landscape or plants, most especially plants, that's a living thing. So it has certain requirements for it to stay healthy and fresh all the time, because of course there are spaces that you would just like to look at, or spaces you would like to interact in. And for me, it's really the biggest factor is in how you take care of that place. I usually go for the easier plants to take care of. Of course, I have to consider the look also, like if the interior designer has a certain direction, I would match the type of plants to use in the interiors and the pots as well. We have shade-tolerant plants from the families of the philodendrons, the dracaenas, sansevieras, the spathiphyllum family. So these are very common plants that we use indoors. Most common mistake in taking care of a plant, especially indoors, is how much water to put or how much water to dispense for the plant. The environmental factors inside the house are different from it being outdoors. We have to research a bit and also ask people who are into plants how to balance it off. It's really a hit and miss situation most of the time. Most of my experience in taking care of plants indoors came from an error or a failure, and eventually led me to killing a plant or something that I was taking care of. It's really a trial and error situation. It's something you have to practice and develop over time. Sometimes we have some weeds that push through the soil. You don't really have to take them out if it's not very invasive. Sometimes it creates this nice bed on the base of the plant. You can also use pebbles as ground cover inside the pot, or you can put a second layer of planting as the understory of your plant. It all depends on how you want your potted plant to look. In watering, for as long as you see that the soil is still wet, try to hold back on putting more water. If it's still damp on top, just hold back for a day or two until that water drains out or it evaporates. In making the plant look pretty, Make sure there are no dried leaves, dead branches. These are things that you can prune out and make them look fresh. Putting your plant indoors, you can move it around once in a while and see where it reacts the best. Because you're sometimes you're not sure if it gets enough sunlight or if there's good ventilation in your space. That's why you have this process of rotating plants. You bring one out, you put in another, you give it time to rest outside because probably you can get more sunlight or more fresh air from the outdoors. I think for garden soil or the plant media that you use, it has to be first and foremost well draining. You don't want water or moisture to be in your pot all the time. If you have to feel it, you have to see if it's not that sticky. We have to make sure that there's enough organic material for good nutrients. For pots, we usually want to match the pot to the interiors or to how everything looks in the space. If it's a living room, I would also check like what fabrics were used, what finishes were used, and then I'll match a pot for that. Of course, it's very easy to just buy a pot, but not think about how it looks in the space. Well, honestly, you can bring any plant into the interiors, right? Into a room. So there will be plants that can stay longer indoors than other plants. You can choose naman what you bring in and bring out. It's just that you have to be able to commit to when you're going to change it. This plant, this Japanese bamboo they call it, but it's a Dracena. We've left that in the condo for about 3 weeks. Almost a month. May konting lanta-lanta siya. It will dry out a bit, but it just keeps on going. As a matter of fact, some of our Dracenas are about 40 years old, if I'm not mistaken. Some of them have come from my lola's backyard pa. So, forever living. Usually, big leaf plants have a tendency to do okay out indoors because with the yung lapad nung leaf nila, they're able to collect whatever remaining sunlight or light there is. So that's an advantage. Snake plant right there. They last very long indoors. Air plants are also a good plant pet. You do have to dunk them in water once in a while. They look very architectural. They have this very modern looking appeal and you don't need soil for it. Cacti and succulents are very complicated actually. They're not very easy to take care of. Hit and miss din siya. You have to have the right conditions for it to just stay green and not lose their limbs because they don't actually have leaves. It's more of limbs. Sa akin, parang siyang disposable plant. Just because it does not require a lot of water doesn't mean you don't water it also. Friends or family who want to try growing plants or having plants in their space. With mga water plants, well, they're known as water plants, but these are the family of the pothos, syndapsus, philodendrons. They're very easy to take care of indoors. Some of these plants are also aquatic types, so you can just put them in water instead of planting them in actual soil. No, you don't have to be an actual green thumb or someone who is very knowledgeable about plants in the get-go. It's really a trial and error thing. It's growing that experience in handling plants. So I think some people get discouraged because the first plant they buy, they kill. Their expectations are totally broken from the first plant. So it's really a lot of practice. It's about collecting different kinds of plants and trying out which one will work for you and which one you will understand. You have to understand the needs and the requirements of how it's going to flourish in your space. The rule is, when it comes to artificial plants, if a person can reach and touch it, don't put it there. And it always has to be clean because it will definitely gather dust. So you have to also commit to cleaning it up all the time to make it, to make it look presentable. I think every home should have something natural, a natural element in them. Plants are just one thing that you can put if you have the patience, the commitment to take care of one. But I think other elements can also reflect the outdoor and natural environment. Pebbles, wood, a water element probably, anything that would connect you back to the natural. I think the homeowner has to realize what kind of space they have. Let's say the space requirements first. You can't bring in big palms or huge philodendrons if you have a tiny space, because it's going to eat up a lot of space. Do you have enough sunlight? Will you be able to water your plants in that space? You can have a garden which is just full of plants, which will entail a lot of maintenance. And you can also just have a very simple garden with paved surfaces, which might also need a bit of cleaning up once in a while, when you have leaf droppings or when the moss starts to settle or grow on the surface. I think the homeowner also needs to research on how to go about building their garden or taking care of their plants. They can Google it, right? They can go to the internet for information, YouTube. But it would be best if they can consult a professional like a landscape architect or horticulturist, plant collectors, nursery owners, so that they can get all the information they need first before they start building and spending for their space.